Welcome to Franchise Killer. It's a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or right. Gosh!
You're just jealous because we've been getting all the podcast listeners all day.
I'm disappointed in myself in my performance.
You should be, because that's a poor John Heater accent.
Well, idiot. Irina said, like, Reese, I think you could do a good job of this. And I was like, maybe I should have prepared. And then I didn't do any, like, vocal workout on it just to see if I could do it. And then
Become
that's what
another
came out.
person. Become another
You
person.
don't have any skills.
No, like, nunchuck skills.
Anyway, I'm Reese. Across from me, we have
David.
to his left,
Irina.
to my right,
Rico.
also known as
Noah.
I like how Rico's like, Rico.
You should be chewing. You should be chewing on some steak when you say that.
No. But to his friends, he's Uncle Rico.
Uncle Rico. Yep.
And building her a cake or something, we have.
AJ.
And the movie we are talking about is Napoleon Dynamite, a movie that spawned 7 sequels, 3 remakes, 5 TV shows, board games.
You know the ones.
Yeah, just
Board games?
Massive franchise.
I would love to see Napoleon Dynamite, the board game.
Well, I actually watched the
it'd
right
be-
thing this time.
It'd be a
What did you
variation
see?
of life.
And yeah, a movie that came out in 2004, directed by Jared Hess, who also directed Nacho Libre, Gentlemen Broncos, Don Verdeen, and The Masterminds. Kind of a descent there. Nacho Libre, obviously we've seen. That's one that I kind of put in the same,
Yep.
area as this one. I really like Nacho Libre, and I think it's kind of the unappreciated of the two. Underappreciated.
It's poop jokes, but done
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Done in its
but
pure
funny.
form.
Hey,
Yeah.
get that butt funny.
Get that going out of my face.
Yeah, I have not seen Gentlemen Broncos, though. That's, from what I could tell, that was like another attempt at the Napoleon Dynamite style, and for whatever reason, it just did not land. And I guess it's kind of a one-trick pony, it looked like at this point, where it's just like, oh, you're still trying to do that same thing, huh?
Right.
And it finally, and it finally ran dry with that movie. And I haven't seen Don Verdeen. Looks similar. Masterminds, that's that Owen Wilson. No, not Owen Wilson. It's Zach Galifianakis and what's her name from Bridesmaids, main girl.
Oh, Amy Poehler?
No, it's the other one. She's
Tina
in
Fey.
Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh, Kristen Wiig?
Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
That, and I have seen that movie. It's like not his style at all. It's like he kind of like sold out. That movie just seems mainstream. And so I think we're kind of, it looks like this director, Jared Hess, has done a lot of work on TV as well. So maybe that's kind of where his future lies. But in terms of film, he might be done for a while, because I just don't, his movies haven't been successful since Nacho Libre. Nacho Libre was his last, like, quote-unquote hit. I wouldn't say big hit.
To direct the Minecraft movie starring Jason Momoa.
That's
I did
right.
see that.
That's right. I take that back. I should have done my research.
Disclaimer,
that's
that is a thing. It's not a joke.
No, I know. It's not a joke. It's actually
that's for the
happening.
audience. I want you to know that's not a joke.
So never mind. I take that back. But is there any realm where that movie's good?
Jason
might
Momoa?
A
I'm trying to-
Minecraft movie?
I'm trying to sum
The
up.
Nether.
I'm trying to sum up. I think they could do it. If they can do a Lego movie well, they can do a Minecraft movie well.
Yeah, I'm just really skeptical. It goes one or two ways. It's the Lego movie or it's Pixels.
Yeah.
Like that, and I could see this easily being like a Pixels type of situation.
But, okay, I was going to say, it's Jason Momoa. He's never been bad. But then I thought about Cats and Idris Elba.
And Conan the Barbarian.
Well, I didn't see
He's in that
movie.
remake, and it's not good.
I didn't see it.
It's not good.
But he doesn't do a bad job, though.
Yeah, I like
He's
Jason
generally
Momoa.
likable.
I'll give it a chance just because it's so bizarre.
Novel.
It has to be a risk.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I would say a 2-hit director. Napoleon Dynamite clearly leading the pack in terms of like cultural relevance, and then Nacho Libre being, even though it made more money, it still isn't quite at that level of Napoleon Dynamite, but it still has that same following where it's like, oh, I love Nacho Libre. Like a lot of people like that movie as well.
Yeah, they both have the similar character trajectory of, weird character, not really looked well upon at the end, does something actually kind of cool.
Yeah, an actual fun fact, I think Jack Black was actually originally going to play a small part in Napoleon Dynamite.
What?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which role it was, but they reached out to him, and I want to say it was the Rex Kwon Do role.
That
he was
that
gonna,
could have been
That
great.
would have been good.
Yeah,
I mean, I still like what we got.
Oh, so another tie-in, by the way, for Irina's series. So we just covered Donnie Darko, right? Well, apparently somebody suggested that the character of Napoleon Dynamite go to a up-and-coming star at the time, Jake Gyllenhaal.
that is so weird.
And it was Uncle Rico for Jack Black.
Oh, Uncle Rico. Okay, that would have that's
also
a complete
would have been good though.
That's a completely different movie. Like when you
Yes,
think about it, though,
very.
You can't. Jake Gyllenhaal's too good looking of a guy to be made into a Napoleon type character.
Here, I will say this: John Heder, whenever he's not, purposefully looking the way he is, isn't a bad looking guy.
He isn't.
But
The beard.
he's easier to mold
true.
into something that looks really goofy.
Well, apparently he went to school with the director and his wife.
Well, they made the short version of this movie before
Yeah.
making this one.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I don't know if they made the short version. It was I think it's a short story that it was based off of, but I don't
It was a
actually
film.
know.
They
Yeah,
made
okay,
it. It was a
film.
student
Okay.
film.
Well, all I know is that when someone asked if Jake Gyllenhaal could be the main lead, he's like, no, John Heder all the way. Has to be him.
Yeah.
Because what had Gyllenhaal done before, like October Sky and I don't know
Donnie,
what else.
Donnie
So yeah,
Darko.
October
Yeah.
Sky, Donnie Darko, and this year was 2004, so he was like prepped to be or was already in A Day After Tomorrow. So that was I think that was his big. I don't want to call it a breakout because his role isn't like, wow, look at Jake Gyllenhaal in that movie, but I think that was his first big budget movie. But the screenplay for this movie is also done by, I need to go into the cast. The movie stars John Heder, John Grease, Aaron Rule, Efren Ramirez, Tina Majorino, and Diedrich Bader. Got a screenplay by Jared Hess and Jerusha Hess. Anyway, for those that are new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, Irina, had you seen... Why do I even say this? But had you seen Napoleon Dynamite before your prep for this episode?
Yes. Surprisingly. No. I think this is one of the few times where it wasn't our mom introducing a movie to us, but our dad. So I don't remember where he discovered it, but I do remember the night we all watched it together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely one of those movies where you watch it once and the humor hasn't quite sunk in yet, but there's something about it that pulls you back to it because it's so wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, the more you watch it, the more quotable and the more hilarious it becomes because it's like you start to adapt to the language.
And I remember our dad taking this to our uncle's place, and he just the movie caught on like wildfire.
Yeah,
and
It's
exactly.
that kind of movie.
like, where he like bought the Liger shirt.
Yep.
He had all this
Yeah,
stuff. Like,
I
it was,
remember. I forgot that he had a
and-
Liger shirt.
and he would always quote the movie too.
Yeah.
So it just that one, it really caught on.
I love that.
Threw steak at your face.
Yeah, and that's part of the. I'll get into it later. Well, but this movie,
Since then, I've seen it several times.
David.
Oh yeah, I saw this in theaters when it came out.
Mhm.
I also my parents bought the DVD immediately, and I remember I have more of a vivid memory not watching in theaters, but when we were visiting my grandparents and my parents put it on, and I don't know if my mom had seen it at the time, but I remember her watching it with us, and it was just like it hit. It was a big hit for like my grandparents, my cousins. Like it's one of those movies that people did not expect.
Multi-generational too, for whatever reason, appeal. Like,
Well, my cousins they're homeschooled. They're not as open to the film industry, I would say. And but this movie, it caught them off guard. They're like, this doesn't seem like it's going to be a a good movie, and well, it landed for them. And fun fact, I called my dad earlier today just to talk about random stuff, and I told him we were recording tonight, and he said, "Oh, what are you guys going to cover?" And I was like, "Napoleon Dynamite." He goes, "You got to be kidding me." He goes, "Just today, I bought a Vote for Pedro t-shirt. It's sitting right next to me in my truck right now." I was
That's so
like,
funny.
"What?"
The timing.
Yeah. He's like, "I just saw it at the store and I had to buy it." And I was
It's
like,
an algorithm.
and then he went on to tell me how much he loves this movie. It reminds him of our childhood. He and my mom still talk about this movie.
Aw.
So it's got some cultural relevance. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
We're all in a simulation.
He does drive a Dodge Tradesman too, so
What's
That's
that?
something.
the van.
Oh. See, I don't know my vans. AJ, how about you? Had you seen this before?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of iconic. You got the kind of weirdly dated feel to it, even though it's more modern. Well, at the time I saw it, you got the kind of kooky Afro guy with the kung fu. So,
I already know. Black Dynamite.
yeah.
Oh, Black Dynamite. We gotta watch that.
I love Black Dynamite, by the way,
Yeah.
and I would love to watch that movie
Mm-hmm.
again too. That would be a nice double
I
feature.
threw that
with this,
before I
actually.
entered the room.
We all just watched
I-
that instead.
Yeah.
But-
we need to all start passing that off as the sequel to this one. And just
Yeah.
say like, "Oh yeah, have y'all seen the sequel to Napoleon Dynamite?"
Black Dynamite.
Black Dynamite.
Yeah.
Napoleon Dynamite. I didn't see it in theaters, but I did see it kind of relatively soon after it released on home media.
Mhm.
And it was one that I, by whatever stroke of luck, I was actually kind of in the know on while it was in vogue, I guess.
Mhm.
With all the quotes, I mean, I think just the quotability of the movie itself just pervades all social ranks and circles and stuff. So
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
it trickled its way down to me as well. So yeah, seen it a bunch of times since then.
I kind of want to have a quote off of. There's only one other movie that I can think of that comes close to being as
I
quotable as
wonder if it's
this.
the same one.
Do y'all know which one I'm
I have
thinking
one
of?
in mind.
Okay, I think it's Step Brothers.
Oh, I have another one.
You do? What is it?
Dodgeball.
Oh, I mean, I can think of two from that one, but I can think of like
Step Brothers
I could
to
name
me
so
is
many.
so quotable.
I know. No, it is. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's not.
yeah, but this one may take the cake. Like I think
It is.
'Cause
This
almost-
is the best.
this movie is just built off of quotes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
But,
The Princess Bride or The Big Lebowski, I think.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two.
Or
Pulp
actually,
Fiction.
Guilty Pleasure, Mean Girls,
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Monty Python, Holy Grail. But
Okay.
yeah,
yeah. Ah.
Dang, you just had this ready to go.
I'm just going through
Yeah.
if I know a quote from a movie, there are not many movies.
Yeah.
Anchorman is up there as well.
Yeah, for sure. But like,
Santiago.
it pervades all socials, like The Office, the show. I mean,
Yep,
just
yep.
the quotability of it kind of anchors it in society.
I
Yeah.
bet you people they know quotes from this movie and probably haven't even seen this movie.
Right. Yeah.
No, there are definitely times where, not with this movie, but with others, you will quote something and you know it's from something, but you don't remember what.
Yeah.
It's like the quote,
Mm-hmm.
it transcends the movie sometimes and integrates into people's cultures.
have
and
you
Because it
lives.
becomes a trope and
Yeah,
it's replicated in
exactly.
other,
I love that feeling, and it happens every now and then where there's a classic movie I haven't seen, and I put it on for the first time, and someone says something, and I'm like, oh, that's where that came from.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it
yeah.
Just totally surprises me.
It's like $1 an hour.
Oh, I love
Noah,
that.
how about you? Had you seen Napoleon Dynamite before this episode?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I could be wrong. I don't know.
Seemed pretty fresh to you, huh?
Yeah. No, I definitely seen this, and it's the same story as both Reese and Irina. So,
Yeah.
I don't feel like it needs to be said a third time.
Yeah, we have a lot of shared experiences as siblings.
Not in theaters, but we were definitely like the bought it as early as possible on DVD when it came out, or our dad did, and then we
I actually-
contributed to that. This being a huge home media success.
So this was actually a birthday gift to me.
Really,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
remember
the
that.
movie, the DVD. So
wonder if
I
it's
had,
still-
Your parents you can really resonate with this.
I
Noah.
remember it had like one of those unique white or like clear cases.
Oh,
instead of
the white
oh,
ones.
I know which one you're talking
Oh,
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those to me were always special. I had one for iRobot,
I remember.
and this one. And
Oh,
then I
not
had
the
one
white
for-
ones, because I remember Holes had the white one.
Yeah, no, it's almost clear, but
Okay,
not quite.
I remember the iRobot one too, for sure. You had that movie as well.
Yeah. Oh, good movie.
All right, so everyone had seen this. So I guess going into this, let's quickly do how long had it been since you'd seen this movie? Just because I feel like this is a good movie that we've had in our heads for so long, but maybe had not rewatched recently, except for you, AJ. So like maybe let's get a guesstimate as to how long it's been since we had actually seen this movie, just so we can see how it compares to this more recent, fresh viewing. So, David, Irina?
Well, for the both of us, I can say we watched it about a month ago.
Month ago. Okay,
Month
so
or
y'all
two.
are recent.
Yeah.
Noah, how about you?
It has been years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't place when the last time I saw it was.
Yeah.
Because it's been that long.
I think I'm with you, Noah. I think at the latest, 2010 is maybe like the last time I saw this, which is forever ago. But it's one of those movies that's just branded in your head.
Well, yeah,
you know everything.
It resides in your head, and you feel like it still feels fresh. Everything about this movie is very clear, you know, and memorable.
Yeah. And AJ, you said like a month or two ago or recently?
Yeah, roughly. I think it was. I had mentioned it. Hey, it's a coincidence when Irina announced her lineup. It's like, hey, I just watched Napoleon Dynamite. A week or two ago.
Yeah.
Before then, it had been maybe a couple years, but it's one that warrants dusting off every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, this was very much a does this hold up to my memory type of watch. Whereas is this as good as I remember or as funny as I remember it being? So that's the context I'm going into with this episode, as same as you, Noah, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Give us that story, David.
Girls only want boyfriends who have great skills. Like nunchuck skills, bow hunting skills, computer hacking skills.
How was school?
Worst day of my life? What do you think? Idiot! What kind of bike do you have?
It's a sledgehammer.
Dang, you ever take it off any sweet jumps?
What are you drawing?
A liger.
What's a liger?
It's my favorite animal. It's like a lion and a tiger mixed.
Why are you so sweaty?
I've been practicing some dance moves. Is Trisha here?
Is that on my driveway?
That's my ride.
Napoleon Dynamite is a socially awkward 16-year-old from Preston, Idaho, who lives with his grandmother, Carlinda Dynamite, and his older brother, Kiplin Ronald Kip Dynamite. Napoleon daydreams his way through school, reluctantly dealing with various bullies who torment him. Napoleon's grandmother is injured in a quad bike accident and asks their uncle Rico to look after the boys while she recovers. Rico, a middle-aged and flirtatious former athlete who lives in a camper van, treats Napoleon like a child. He uses the visiting opportunity to team up with Kip to get a get-rich-quick scheme by selling items door to door. Kip wants money to pay for his internet girlfriend, LaFonda, to travel from Detroit to see him, while Rico believes riches will help him get over his failed dreams of NFL stardom and the recent breakup of his girlfriend. Napoleon becomes friends with two students at his school. Deb, a shy girl who runs various small businesses to raise money for college, and Pedro, a bold yet calm transfer student from Juarez, Mexico. Preparations begin for the high school dance. Pedro asks Summer Wheatley, a popular and snobby girl, to be his partner, but is rebuffed. He then asks Deb, who gladly accepts. Pedro encourages an upset Napoleon to find a date for himself, and he picks a popular classmate, Trisha, from the school yearbook. As a gift, he draws an unintentionally bad picture of her and delivers it to Trisha's mother, who is one of Rico's customers. Rico tells embarrassing stories about Napoleon to evoke sympathy from Trisha's mother, who buys his wares and forces Trisha to reluctantly accept Napoleon's invitation. Trisha appears at the dance with Napoleon, but soon abandons him, causing Pedro to let Deb dance with Napoleon. Pedro decides to run for class president, pitting him against Summer. The factions of the two candidates put flyers up and hand out trinkets to students to attract voters. To increase their respect by demonstrating skills, Napoleon and Pedro enter a Future Farmers of America, or FFA, competition grading milk and cow udders. They do well and win medals, but this does little for their popularity. Incidentally, Napoleon visits a thrift store and buys an instructional dance videotape called Dequan's Dance Grooves, becoming a skillful dancer. Kip's girlfriend LaFonda arrives from Detroit and gives him an urban makeover, outfitting him in a hip-hop regalia. Seeing that he dances, LaFonda gives Napoleon a mixtape. Rico's ongoing sales scheme causes friction with Napoleon as he continues to spread embarrassing rumors about him to prospective customers. Rico tries to sell Deb a breast enhancement product, claiming it was Napoleon's suggestion, which causes her to break off their friendship. His scheme ends after his sales pitch to the wife of the town's martial arts instructor, Rex, goes awry. Rex assaults Rico after unexpectedly arriving during his demonstration of the breast enhancement product. Summer gives a speech before the student body on election day and then presents a dance skit to Larger Than Life by the Backstreet Boys with a school club. A despondent Pedro gives an unimpressive speech after discovering he is also required to perform a skit. To save Pedro's campaign, Napoleon gives the sound engineer LaFonda's mixtape and spontaneously performs an elaborate dance routine to Canned Heat by Jamiroquai. Napoleon's routine receives a standing ovation from students, stunning Summer and her boyfriend Don. Pedro becomes the class president, Kip and LaFonda leave on a bus for Michigan, Rico reunites with his estranged girlfriend, Grandma returns from the hospital, and Napoleon and Deb reconcile and play tetherball. In the post-credit scenes, 2 months later, Kip and LaFonda get married, and Napoleon appears with a horse in which the bride and groom ride out on into the sunset.
That movie doesn't need that long of
I
a
know.
synopsis.
I know.
So now that everyone's asleep and tucked away in their beds,
Do some editing.
that was
magic.
impressive though. Good job.
How's that?
You got through it.
I got through it. I'm glad I don't have to do it a second
Like
time.
I can't imagine how much I would have stumbled through that if it were me.
Ugh,
A lot. Just so you know.
thanks.
So yeah, that is the intricate plot of Napoleon Dynamite, a movie that definitely has a arc that goes from, first act, second act, third act.
Oh yeah, an hour and 35 minutes movie right here.
Yeah. No, I would say this is a very unstructured movie, and I like it that way. It is the goofy comedy version of like a Dazed and Confused type movie where there is, yes, developments happen, but
What is the plot?
Yeah, the A to B isn't much. Like Napoleon Dynamite. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, some people have described it as a series of vignettes, which I think is a little too nebulous. I mean, it does have a linear progression.
Yeah. I mean, there is an A to B, like Napoleon does develop, he is slightly changed by the end of it, or in a slightly different situation, but that's really not what this movie's about. It's above all a comedy, and like an off-kilter type of comedy at that. It's just a new type of just off. Like, I remember watching this the first time, and this isn't one of those movies, weirdly, that I would just put on as comfort food, because I actually hate the setting, and I don't like the area.
And it's a very awkward film style where it could lead you to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's just hilarious. It's a movie you put on if you want to laugh. It's not a movie that I put on to like go to sleep to, or you know what I'm saying. Like,
I know.
I would put on a dumb comedy like Blades of Glory or Dodgeball or something that give you the warm and fuzzies while also making you laugh. But this one's like, it's just slightly off, and I think that's what distinguishes it from.
And I think that offness about it is partially the relatability of the average, the mundane, and why kind of all of us can relate to it, or it's just too off where it just doesn't resonate with you at all. And, it's a very polarizing film. A lot of people will just think it's hilarious, or I guess people kind of miss the wave, the social sentiment on it and its bubble. And they come to it, after all the hype and stuff. Then if they can't overcome that offness, the offbeat aspect of it, then it just doesn't, it misses completely. So
Well, with that, I mean, there was a quote I brought up yesterday. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but basically Netflix, when they had it on there, their algorithms are pretty good at just figuring out whether or not people really like a movie or not. And apparently this movie just baffled their analysts because like a ton of people gave it perfect 10s, and then other people gave it 1s. They said it was like one of the widest margins.
Same thing with IMDb, is like one of the most polarizing movies on IMDb scores.
Yeah, and I could see why. And I don't blame people for not liking this movie.
Right.
And you do have to kind of be in a certain mood. Like there have been a couple times where I'll try to put this on to, cheer myself up or something, and just doesn't I got to turn it off, watch something else.
Yeah, it doesn't hit in that way. It's more like this is I don't think this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't think this is a movie you watch by yourself, or it's not as successful that way. Like it's you have to watch it with a group who are all just like sharing in these very quotable moments and just these weird eccentricities.
Well, we watched it as a group yesterday. Irina, AJ, and Reese and I on Watch Movies Anywhere or whatever, because obviously AJ's off in Preston, Idaho right now, and so we thought like, hey, this is a great time to try to watch this, and it was so much more fun watching it as a group.
Yeah, it really was. Like, I like watching it's I can't just throw this on by myself. It just feels weird doing that.
Yeah, it's not a by yourself movie.
And context for this movie and like what was the purpose of making it this way. So we kind of mentioned that, a lot of the cast and crew all knew each other from Brigham Young University before, as some student film, and just kind of had some, maybe some couple degrees of separation between their network and stuff like that. But a lot of this was just kind of anecdotal, actual experiences that the director and writer Jared Hess had growing up, because this is set in his hometown. And it's just kind of, this actually happened, like crazy things like the part where the school bus pulls up and the farmer puts the cow down, like, and they all scream because all the kids see it, like literally just the cow getting shot right then and there. That actually happened in Jared Hess's life, like pretty much like it was shown on screen. So some of it is so offbeat, but he actually pulls from it. And, it's kind of got this mishmash of decades, the title sequence that we see with all the food and kind of stuff with the condiments written with the opening credits and stuff wasn't the original opening for the movie. It was just kind of a cold open. They at the Sundance when it premiered. But they did that to kind of give some time frame, saying it was okay, this is set in 2004, because otherwise, some of the fashion is like, this is 70s, 80s, and then so much stuff is dated. Because it's such a small town, time moves a little bit slower. A lot of the sets were
80s.
Literally like borrowed. They just went to people's houses, and that was how they had their furniture set and decorated, like as it was. They didn't do much to dress up the stuff. And
so, like Napoleon's house, that was like a used house.
Yeah, so Napoleon's house actually was a last minute change because they were going to be in another house, but something fell through at the last minute, so they had to find this other house, and they put like a false wall up, and a couple of the pictures of Napoleon and Kip on the back wall are there, but everything else is pretty much, that's how the actual residents had it. So that kind of lends this weird, quirky authenticity where it's just this mishmash of stuff, but yet, if you've ever been in a small town or know people from a small town, it still rings true across a lot of parts of, America at least. So
yeah.
Well, I got a ticket in Itasca, Texas, and I had to go there for kind of combating my ticket. And that was a town living probably in the 50s. Most of the people there were from the 50s. So
part of the reason this movie resonates so well with me, and maybe you guys as well, is our family, grew up in Texas, and you could argue Austin isn't really Texas, but anytime we do take a trip somewhere, it's usually a road trip. And so we pass through many towns kind of like this. And no matter which direction you go, you see like just kind of flat plains. And once you do hit a town, everything looks like it's from kind of a different decade, and it's slower. Everything is almost looking dusty, and it just felt like a familiar territory to me.
This is Idaho, though, right?
Yeah, this is Preston,
but it is
Idaho.
similar.
But it's similar. It's like I think there's a level of this movie that is, in my mind, Americana, and a more accurate Americana than what you would expect
Not the
from
glamorized
Hollywood.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was telling David and Irina, that shirt that Napoleon wears quite a bit, the kind of powder blue with the white Mustang on it, like literally is almost exactly what my elementary school mascot t-shirt looked like. And so some of that is just like this
great.
evokes this feeling of nostalgia without the tone of it, and the atmosphere of it is authentic.
It's spot on.
And it draws you in too. It's on in the background. I just watched this earlier today, and I'm having trouble looking away. Just
it's entrancing, isn't it?
Yeah, you just want to keep looking at it. I don't know what about it.
I
does-
think
Filmography
it's
too, like just the shots. It's been compared to, and now David brought this up a lot too, to Wes Anderson's style of blocking the shots, the centered shots, and everything. And how things go from wide to the kind of quick zoom in on the subject. But, you go from something that's maybe not traditionally beautiful with these, say like The Revenant or something like this. You have all the mountainous and stuff. You kind of have the northern, less forgotten Rockies in the middle of Idaho, Utah. There's beautiful parts, but you're kind of having to hunt it out. It's not the touristy destinations.
Yeah.
And it's kind of got this dusty haze over everything. But still, like all those shots make you feel like you're there and you've been there before. And
Right.
Yeah. I also want, and we're watching it on silent, but I want to shout out the sound design in this movie because I can hear it as I'm
as
watching.
you're watching it.
And this has to, I don't know when ASMR came about, but there are moments in this movie where I'm like, this had to have inspired like ASMR.
Like
the crunchiness of the tots.
Yes,
I can
exactly.
hear them.
I was gonna
Or when
say
he's
that.
cutting the steak on the plate, you can hear
him
on the
chewing.
ceramic.
Like all of it is
Yeah.
like intensified.
Yeah.
And it
John
works.
Heater, I think, has done some ASMR videos, but and it also works really well because all of the actors and actresses in this are so expressive and evoke emotions and convey what they're doing just by their facial expressions alone without necessarily the verbal aspect of it, which really goes a long way in a low budget film.
Yep.
Yeah. And every character is so distinctive too in the way that they talk. There's like a rhythm and a melody to the way that they talk. Like they're just so well defined. It's almost like Wes Anderson-esque, but it's
That's
like
what they said. That's what Andrew was saying.
Well, no,
sorry.
it's a very popular comparison.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's a case study in body language and physical acting and stuff as well. So
yeah. So let's talk about our cast, and starting with the titular Napoleon Dynamite, played by John Heater. How do we feel about John Heater as Napoleon Dynamite? And Irina, since you picked this miniseries and this movie, what are your thoughts? Like when he first is on the screen and his first line, like does it still deliver? And does this character, do you like him?
Whenever I feel like, gosh, yeah. He's, in my mind, immediately iconic. It's like you see him and you know exactly what this person is going to do or act like. And maybe that's after watching it so much, I'm very familiar with it. But there's something about his performance that's just so pitch perfect. And just even the little details, like him being in the bus and having a little figurine with floss attached to it. And it's something that seems so simple and not very exciting. But in the mind of an imaginative kid or high schooler, that's just something you entertain yourself with.
Do you know what? We quote the gosh more, but I think what sells that character more is what you're saying, the throwing the superhero out the window.
Yeah.
Like, because when he says gosh the first time, and I hadn't seen it in a while, I was like, uh-oh, is this gonna not age as well? Because that first time he does that, I was like, oh, I don't know.
You don't know.
Because I'm just so, I know the character so well that when he does it again, it's like, okay.
Yep.
yeah,
Like it, but then he just like eases into it from then on, and it works.
Yep.
he becomes Napoleon Dynamite. I mean, and unfortunately, and I'm sure his career has kind of taken a hit from being typecast. Like you can't see him without seeing Napoleon.
Yeah.
But he's simultaneously ultra stereotypical nerd, geek, whatever, what have you, but at the same time, again, the authenticity of it. And, you know, I kind of traveled in the lower tier social circles around, you know, the geekiness and doing doodles of whatever mystical things in your notebook and all those little things, like the minutia of it, like, again, further his the genuineness of it. And, you know, talking about skills and trying to fit in, how he gets bullied, just, you know, interacting with people. It's kind of his day-to-day part of it, and how he copes.
Yeah.
Really. And,
I think I love this depiction too, because not once is he depicted as a tragic character.
right, exactly.
Where I think usually that's the button people press when they try to show like locker room scenes where, oh yeah, your protagonist is a geek, but
or the
you know,
triumph
he's
story
just
is a revenge or get back and show them all. This is like,
exactly.
No, he's doing him, and that is what triumphs in the end.
Well, he is bullied at one point, but it's never focused on. It's never really like, you're not supposed to feel bad for him in the same way. It's just kind of like a part of the mundane that he goes through.
Yeah, but it still succeeds in you wanting to see him win in some way, you know? And in his mind, he's kind of always winning because he keeps trying.
Napoleon is always winning.
Exactly. Well, like it's like he has ups and downs in life, but there's something about his character that is just, he will just keep doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people have that.
He's an underdog that doesn't see himself as an underdog.
Exactly.
You know,
he weirdly follows the hero's journey.
He does.
Little bit.
He does.
But it's awkward
his
high
own
school
hero's
hormones
journey.
and geekiness.
I think he sees himself as a bit under. There's that one scene where he's with Pedro and he's like, "Do you have a girlfriend?" He's like, "Yeah, she's a model." And he's like, "Is she hot?" And he's like, "Yeah, see for yourself." Hey, like,
but yeah, that's normal 16-year-old. I mean, he's supposed to be 16 in this.
Yeah.
It's normal, like, kind of bravado, bragging just to like boost yourself up. And, oh, my girlfriend's in Oklahoma, all this stuff. Or, you know, killed 50 Wolverines.
Badgers,
in Alaska
with,
freaking 12 gauge. Gosh,
freaking 12 gauge. What do you think?
It's so good.
I think what I think is really good about, or what this movie does really well, is his character is so specific, but yet I think we all knew someone like this in high school. Like, I knew, I can picture this guy right now. There was a person. Yeah. AJ.
No. I wasn't going to say it.
No, there was this guy in my high school, that I don't even want to say he was like one of the lowest tier.
Right.
But he was just like an outsider, I guess.
Off doing their own thing.
Yeah, off doing their own thing.
And
like,
we all knew a Trish. We all knew a Dawn. We all knew you know, every one of these characters, really.
Right.
They're all archetypes.
Yeah. I just distinctively remember him. He's very Napoleon Dynamite, but he would do different things. Like, he would run really low in the ground and like put his arms to his side like blades and just like run down the hallway as fast as possible to the next class. And I'm like, that's like a Napoleon Dynamite type
these
character.
are the original anime watchers.
The people who do the Naruto run.
Yeah. But I was like, it totally makes sense.
It's funny because there's kind of I would say more of a modern trend to psychoanalyze these kind of characters and give them a diagnosis, you know, pull out the MSV5 and say, oh, he's classic this, classic like.
Right.
This movie, like, who cares? This is Napoleon Dynamite. I'm not going to say, oh, he's on this kind of spectrum or yada, yada, yada. It doesn't matter. Like, because he's a real person instead of an example. I don't know.
No, yeah. Because not once does it show that he's actually like in what's the word?
Like limited by anything?
Yeah. He's not limited by anything. He might be socially awkward, but he's authentically himself.
Well, no more than his brother or his uncle.
So it would be an insult to try and diagnose him in this movie because it feels like there's, oh yeah, he's this way because of this problem. No, he's just like, nobody really understands him.
And I feel like the modern trend, if this came out today, all the critics would be, oh, this is a brilliant portrayal of this type of person, or no, this is insensitive or something. Like, this is like beyond that. This is just someone telling the story of his, you know, personal experiences being Hess through this other character that's kind of quirky and is funny, but, you know, also very true to the heart.
Yep.
Like somebody really is just walking around with a hand cam around Preston, Idaho, and this is what they found.
All right, let's move on to Kip and Uncle Rico.
It's such
These
a good
two characters
duo.
have I think Kip might have gotten the most laughs out of me,
I love
actually.
Kip.
Yeah.
He is just so funny.
And say things are getting pretty serious.
Well,
Yeah,
he
he's
just
brilliant
starts to
support.
talk and you start laughing.
He's just so funny. You definitely again, weirdly identifiable. He's the older brother
Yeah,
type.
he's like
But he's-
32.
He's doing online dating, just doing taekwondo or whatever. It's just
I'm online for like 4 to 6 hours a day, so I guess you could say it's getting pretty serious.
serious. And I don't know, it's another outrageous but also subtle performance at the same time.
Mhm.
Like it's turned up to 11 while also
Yeah.
being restrained at the same
Yeah.
time. Like I don't even know how to describe
He's
Yeah.
what
truly
he's doing.
supportive. He's a support
Yep.
character that really provides a backdrop for all the other characters. And a lot
Yep.
of the kind of inspiration and creativity behind the scenes, I think, were some of his ideas. Like I know the title sequence was his, but he is always the guy that kind of provides the setup for the alley-oop.
And that's and that's
Yes.
Aaron Rule, by the way. Just so we know. So we also have Pedro and
Oh yeah,
Uncle
we didn't talk
Rico.
about. Rico. Yeah,
I was just gonna lump those other three
Yeah.
together. So we have Uncle Rico, the wannabe footballs.
He's like
Stuck in
a
82.
yeah. Yeah, he's living in the past
He,
basically.
he has this really weird way of towing the line between being both a bully but also really supportive of them at the same time.
Low key though, low key. If Coach put him in the fourth quarter, they would have went to state.
It would have
Yeah.
went to state.
They would have went to state.
He,
But actually,
I think what you're getting at, Noah, is basically he overcompensates for being, the loser. Otherwise, he kind of walks that fence. He would really fall on the loser side of the whatever thing runs in his family,
yes,
the Napoleon, the Kip. But he has to overcompensate for it to try to
Seem
exude
cool.
that bravado
Right.
and machismo
Yeah.
and stuff. But that's why he's also never truly successful, because he's stuck in trying
Right.
to get this one single-minded focused goal.
Yep.
One of my favorite moments in the movie is when they buy the time machine online or whatever, and when Napoleon Dynamite's trying it out, he's like, "Oh yeah, don't forget the crystals." The crystals.
But then-
Go ahead.
Well, when Uncle Rico walks back into the room, he's like, "I could have told you that." Again, the physical acting of it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
subtle, but it's there. And John Grease is such a good. I mean, he's very prolific. Like he's in a lot of stuff you wouldn't realize.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
real genius. He was Lazo, which is another one of my favorites. But he's even like Linus's dad in the flashbacks of the Dharma Initiative in Lost.
Yeah.
He's a bunch of. He's
Whoa.
just everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
I also
actor.
I love him, John Grease. Two Johns in this movie. But
Cool.
also in that sorry, I don't know why I had to say that, but also in that time machine scene, I just love how Kip just already saw it happen to Rico, and he's just quietly watching Napoleon
like,
suffer
waiting
with
for
a little
it.
Oh, he's
smile
smiling
on
too.
his
He's like
face.
leaving the thing plugged in, and it's so funny. And again, like the mishmash of decades too.
Yeah.
They're still using dial-up internet in 2004.
Yeah.
And, there's still places like that. Like, believe it or not, a lot of people are, privileged to not have to deal with that, but that's still a thing.
Wait,
And
dial-up
that-
is still a thing right now?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
What?
So again, that's just kind of different places run at different speeds.
Yep.
And then just get this kind of thing in eBay with the stamp type on it, and
Well, don't forget about the long cable on the telephone. You got to
Oh,
leave
yeah,
the room. You got to
well-
go. You got to get the long cable. You
walk
got to
out
go out
to
the
the
front
front
door.
porch just to get 2 words in.
It reminds me of my dad. He's like, "Yeah, you don't understand. You had cell phones all your life. If I had to get a private conversation, I had to hope we had the long cable, and I had to go out into my bedroom and close the
Yeah.
door and hope no one
Or
was listening."
My well-off friend would have a second line to their house that's a different
Yeah.
number, so they didn't tie up the internet or whatever to do their LAN party.
Oh, we've all had that situation that where we're visiting a friend and we're on the computer. You hear that just terrible, like,
Get off the phone.
Yep. So we had to argue, and then we had to get off the internet when somebody was on the phone because they were calling somebody in a different city. Yep.
So if you
That
wanna feel
reminds
that-
me of this.
Go to the Internet Cafe in Preston, Idaho.
Which this play at Preston, Idaho, I bet is blown up. You just know
They
they're
have
big
a
city.
Napoleon Dynamite like day and festival, and Like they embrace it. I mean, as a lot of cities do that are in similar situations where
Yep.
there's this super iconic thing that's a national phenomenon. They really have to embrace it. Otherwise, it kind of consumes them, I think.
Mm-hmm. All right. Efren Ramirez is Pedro Sanchez.
Frickin' Pedro, man.
Love him. He's
I
the
love this guy.
ultimate best buddy.
Yeah. Actually, they're both he and John Heater are pretty good friends to this day. Like, I was watching a video of them like not that long ago, like promoting some museum or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they were just both trekking in the woods and
That's so
talking,
cool.
and like they're good friends.
Yeah, he's also a DJ, does some big shows in Austin occasionally.
Yeah.
That is
I would
super
not
cool.
have expected that. I think one of Jared Hess's tricks to making this just funnier is having the actors just have their mouths constantly slightly open.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Especially Pedro's.
it just really adds to the like I don't
Yeah.
know, just the awkward comedy
Yes.
of this.
I feel like people breathe through their mouth more in high school. I don't know why. They did.
Is that what?
Yeah,
is that
people,
something
no,
you
just
noticed?
look over, yeah, you look around the room and you just see people like staring off into space going like,
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of that in this.
They all
movie.
have
Yep.
unique mannerisms that identify their
Yep.
characteristics. You know, whether it's looking off to the side or not making direct eye contact, or just kind of really terse one-line expressions that are just kind of yeah, or I don't know. It's kind of unbelievable but believable. Again, it's this
Yeah.
dichotomy of absurd but real.
Yeah. I also love his cousins too with their lowrider or whatever. Just
Pedro's,
the yeah. When he picks her up for the date.
It's
That's
like,
later on.
Hey, I'm
But-
friends with Pedro. Are you his cousins?
And then the music.
Yep.
Oh, can I talk about
Censor
this? Yeah, thanks, David.
I'm sure we'll be fine, guys.
But I also want to talk about the score to this movie, which is just so specifically weird. Like, who did the music? It was John Swihart? Swihart? Sorry if I said
Swihart.
that wrong. Yeah, John Swihart. I love this weird, like almost, it's not 8-bit, but it's kind of just,
I
The
don't know
one song-
anything else like
the one
this.
song that always pops into my head is the
Again, transcends decades
Yeah.
and its simplicity. I think Hess again knew him from Brigham Young, or the area, and kind of he was doing his own thing, making music, and he liked it, and kind of basically just let him do what he wanted to do for the score. And I'm curious, actually, now that I think about it, if he's going to call on him again to do the Minecraft movie, because you've got the chiptune kind of
yeah, exactly, yeah.
aesthetic there.
Yeah, you're right. That's what I was looking for, chiptune.
Like,
not
what
8-bit.
would have happened in this kind of movie if we didn't have that soundtrack? I think it would have changed the whole movie.
Yeah,
I don't know what else you could have. I mean, you've got a couple big songs like the Backstreet Boys, and then some of the other like the dance
Jamiroquai.
number, which the joke is literally those licenses were half the budget of the movie.
Yeah.
But I think just the simplicity of it adds to the universal aspect of it.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, I'm about to make the wildest comparison, and I think this movie is very similar to
Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky. Yeah, exactly. With all the eggs that they're drinking, and
I mean, it kind of is the A-Team suit up scene, and like all the. If you look at it as a Rocky parallel, it's there.
yeah,
It's there. You can probably find anything to compare anything to.
I don't think anyone's ever compared to this to Rocky except for you, AJ.
no. And Blank Check, one of my favorite podcasts, made this observation about Sam Raimi. But Sam Raimi is a director who likes to punish his main character in hilarious ways. Like you think about Bruce Campbell in Evil Dead, who's constantly like he has a possessed hand and he's smashing plates on his head and forcing him to do backflips.
Physical comedy.
Yeah, you go to the Spider-Man trilogy and Peter Parker is just literally crapped on in every single way you can imagine. I mean, it's just part of what he's put through. And in a way, Jared Hess, in every scene, it's just watching Napoleon Dynamite kind of fail or get hurt.
Or
Or
the
Suffer some
headlock,
way.
he's got the I know they did several takes for the failed bike jump. They did,
Yeah.
I think, 3 takes for the stake to the face. which actually knocked his glasses off. And I think,
And that even the little scenes, like every scene is something where it's just like not quite going
Or like
his way.
he drinks the eggs and he's like, ugh.
When
carrying the chickens and
we were just watching the chicken scene, and that one chicken is just like reeling up to try and like bite him, and he like doesn't know what to do with it. He's just like stuffing it in the cage. Like it's just, I think that's what makes this movie really funny too. Is just you're just watching him. Like what makes it funny is he's not like genuinely hurt by any of this.
Yeah.
He's Napoleon Dynamite. He like this crap just happens to him, and he's used to it.
drinking bleach and milk.
I know.
Yeah, this cow went through an onion patch or something like that. Yeah. And also, I do want to apologize. We're not really going through the plot like we normally do because it's almost plotless, but I guess I should kind of summarize where we're at now. So Napoleon Dynamite, he goes to school.
Yeah, I mean, we've been running down the characters essentially.
Yeah.
He's in high school.
Setting,
Yeah, he's in high school, makes friends with Pedro, who's another new guy from Juarez. So they're kind of the outcasts. They meet Tina?
Deb.
Sorry.
Tina.
Yeah,
Tina's the mama.
Yeah, Deb's the...
They meet Tina.
They do meet Tina.
Yeah, so Deb, we haven't talked about Deb, so let's quickly talk about Deb. She is played by Tina. She is played by Tina.
Yeah.
Oh,
There are
there you
other
go.
Tinas.
Played by Tina Maharino. Sorry if I got that wrong. She's going door to door trying to raise money for college, selling her bracelets. She's also got a lot of other attempted side hustles, like being a photographer, all in an effort to make money.
She's working it though. In 2004, that's impressive.
Yeah, and she is like the perfect complement to Napoleon in a way. Like they established Majorino. Yeah, all right, thank you, Tina Majorino. She is the perfect complement to Napoleon Dynamite, and they established this with her. She's similarly socially awkward, and they're seen at the cafeteria where she just has food on her face, and it's just like doesn't really register.
Yep.
It's just like y'all are equally kind of awkward. But
well,
what do y'all
it's
think?
Singly focused and maybe not fully self-aware, but also to their credit, that what gives them by in their social order, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. How do y'all feel about her performance here?
I love when she first is on the scene, when they first introduce her. And I mean, obviously she's great throughout the movie.
Your mom goes to college.
Yes, but when that scene where she is trying to, do you want to look like this? And just shows Napoleon a picture of a girl.
Yeah, just total disconnect
I
from
used
reality.
to-
Well,
I
she's
used to do-
honest.
Yeah.
That's what exudes from her is honesty, in my opinion.
Yes.
Well, I used to do canvassing for a short period of time.
You loved
and
that, right?
It was awful. But there's that, everything's so scripted. So for her, she's not great in social settings, which I related to a lot, especially at that age. So like all you have is your little setup, like order of what you have to say. Regardless of whether it's a dude, you're like, I don't have the ability to readjust
Deviate from
my
it,
sales pitch. So I'm just going to go with
Yeah.
my
She
script.
went for it.
Yeah. So I love her performance because she's immediately endearing, and as soon as she runs away, you're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I just love the friendship that's built because it's never, there is an established kind of understanding that she and Napoleon Dynamite have like sort of romantic interest, but it never
On the
really-
minorest
Well,
of levels.
it never really gets to the point where it's like he won the girl. It's more like they had a really good friendship between the three of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a synchronism almost, like
Yeah.
and really, if you look at it, if you want to take a analytical approach to it, so Deb and Rico are kind of opposite ends of Napoleon. They have this similar, like, door to door hustle kind of thing, where Rico has this chip on his shoulder, trying to like kind of schmooze and con over people and kind of sleazy about it. Deb does the same thing, does door to door multiple ventures, but she has this really kind of authentic and honest way of going about it. That's like kind of true to her focus, instead of worrying about what she should be or is expected and stuff. And so Napoleon obviously gravitates away from Rico's presence and towards Deb. So there's kind of that interesting dualism there on either side of Napoleon.
And I think that, like you're saying, Kip is almost right in the middle between them, where he has that aspect of him where he has a singular focus, but at the same time, he still has that sort of dreamer side where he's willing to try several things that interest him, kind of like Napoleon does. But he's like in that middle part where he's starting to get up in age and becoming the almost like Uncle Rico's loser trying to
by this time he's just kind of getting TO'd. So
he's just getting TO'd.
Really TO'd.
But yeah, it's really interesting to look at the characters that way on sort of this this line, like where they land.
Yeah,
I kind of like how Rico is probably the true loser, and Kip actually ends up, I don't know.
He's the one who ends up with the girl
in a better space. But Rico the whole time is kind of using Kip for validation of himself.
Yeah,
like because he's that one guy who's always going to say nice things about it, like his football throwing video.
Right,
and like, it's pretty cool, I guess.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like it's like, and Napoleon is like, "This is the worst video I've ever seen."
Yeah.
But he's
like you would even know.
He's the friend that like he keeps around to make himself feel better.
Right.
Like because he
Boosts
uses him as a negative comparison, which is pretty crappy. But that's how he validates himself. Especially, I mean, the whole steak thing. I mean, he eats like basically exclusively steak in this video, and John Grease is like a vegetarian.
Yeah.
So like as much steak, like, you can see at one point where after he throws the steak, he spits it out in his hand real quick and puts it on
AJ
display.
pointed that out to us when we were watching it. I've seen this movie a good amount of times.
That's acting talent there.
But I never noticed that.
So
But,
mild correction. I don't like it's so mild, but he's not quite a vegetarian. He just doesn't eat red meat. But I know there's going to be a couple people that listen who are going to be like,
"Thank you."
Oh.
No,
but that's
you're quite correct in doing so. But he doesn't take his own steak and throw it at Napoleon. He grabs Kip's steak to throw it at him, and just like he's kind of a user, really.
Yep.
And just how he kind of uses Napoleon as a kind of fake sob story just to sell his
it's
wares.
a sales tool.
Yeah, exactly. So
and I guess this is a good opportunity to talk about the kind of battle between the two of them throughout this movie. It's like, but yeah, these two kind of get adversarial because I think what starts it out is the most minor of things. Like Napoleon Dynamite doesn't like his video, and that kind of turns into Rico maybe takes a little jab at him, and it kind of escalates. It never becomes a huge full blown thing, but it's that's kind of the midpoint of this movie is a lot of these scenes between them where Rico is making life harder for Napoleon Dynamite at school, just embarrassing him like he's trying to get with Trish. And of course, Rico goes to Trish's house and says like, yeah, Napoleon, he's never had a lot of luck. It doesn't have a lot of issues.
Still wets the bed.
He still wets the bed. Yeah. And also the, Rico becomes kind of a creep too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He definitely is.
But yeah, with the breast enhancement stuff that he's like,
that goes hand in hand with him living in the past, where he imagines himself still as this like young guy that probably could get any girl in his day or whatever.
And even that is probably embellished from what reality was.
Exactly.
Yeah, the one scene I didn't like in this movie actually was that scene where she's taking his photograph and it gets really creepy for a second.
That is the creepiest scene.
Yeah, as he's like coming up behind her, like blurred, like with the like. Hey,
and then he starts like unbuttoning his vest and stuff.
I was like, oh,
you're like, what
I
is
do not like
happening?
where this is going.
They don't delve into it for too long, and very quickly you're like, okay, it's not great, but it's nowhere near as creepy as it could have been.
Yeah, but it just kind of makes him almost irredeemable in that moment.
Yeah,
where. Before I would have been like, oh, he's just like a failure of an uncle, but he just gets gross at times.
Yeah.
So I know we were having a big old love fest here over the movie. I do want to pose a question, and I haven't fallen on either end of this yet. But there's a element of this movie that I'm still trying to figure out whether it works or not. And it is Napoleon Dynamite as a character. While I think he is perfect, I'm almost... What doesn't work for me is when they do these needle drops of like 80s songs, and it's supposed to get me to feel like some sort of emotion about what this character is going through.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the movie does enough to get me inside of Napoleon Dynamite's
I
head.
disagree.
Okay,
I never thought
Inside
the
his
music was
head
supposed
or
to do
inside his
that.
heart? I
Inside
think what
his
you're
heart.
saying is the emotional weight.
Yes, and that,
Superficial.
yeah, and I'm not just talking about the needle drops, but what they're putting his character through. Like, I get what he's going through, but what John Heater's trying to do is he's really trying to thread a needle. And I think he
Yeah.
mostly threads it where it's like, be just as funny while also having a more of a character under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out whether or not that completely works on the slight emotional level that this movie is going for at times, specifically towards the end, where I just like this character.
It needs
he
total
never-
balance. So
Yeah,
he
he
never
never-
truly like takes a hit. You know, it's always just kind of laugh it off with a one-liner or a funny quip or something like that. We don't ever see him like kind of knocked down. Even,
and-
you know, like that, the needle drop I think you're talking about is at the dance where, you know, Trish walks
Yeah.
off and disappears. He goes to the bathroom to, you know, get a wad of Big League Chew and to freshen his breath, presumably, because he thinks he's going to get a kiss or something. But a lot of that is forcing you to read between the lines. And he comes back and you can see like he's like kind of disappointed that now he's abandoned and doesn't have a date. He's watching everybody else kind of dance and have fun. But you're really having to reach to get to that point because we're not already on board emotionally with him.
Mm-hmm.
We're in sync with him kind of on the, you know, the superficial, like just conceptual level, but not emotionally. So I get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, and as much as I love the soundtrack, I feel like it gives the movie a weight that it really wasn't kind of asking for. I don't know. Like,
I think
I
the
love
fix
the
would be to
soundtrack.
lean into it more to remedy the, like, we need a little bit of him taking one on the chin and seeing him a little bit, you know, kind of taking a breath and, you know, kind of leveling himself after, you know, being rejected or something like that instead of just kind of the laugh it off kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
because
that would even it out a bit.
yeah, just sometimes he comes off as more of a like the best SNL character ever created. Like
Yeah.
you know, where
Yeah.
it's he's so funny to watch,
I never
just
would've
his
thought of that, but
mannerisms. But there's never anything like he never breaks from that. It's always like this is and that's who he is, and maybe that's part of the character. He's not going to let you in to that, like, and that's the point.
So,
But
I think to counter what you and AJ were saying is that I, in a weird way, think that this movie, unlike any other movie ever that I've watched, needs any of that. I don't think the emotional depth. Throw it out the window with this movie.
yeah,
Do not care. The music had nothing to do with my emotions. I didn't care about his emotional journey. I was just witnessing this guy's life.
yeah,
The humor that happened to be there, his friendships he happened to have along the way. It was
You're
perfection.
forever young.
Yes, it just none of it mattered to me. I was just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Like there are very few movies that I can just be like, I'm just happy to watch what's happening.
So
I go ahead. Irene.
sorry, I think I would push back on the emotional side and say I actually felt a lot for his character, and I don't think it had to be any more dramatic because he's so, while he is kind of an extrovert, there's something about his delivery and the way he expresses himself that's very underplayed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his kind of character actually resonated with me a lot because I think I felt more on the inside than was expressed. And so this movie, although it is a movie and usually things kind of go larger than life, I think this movie is focusing on sort of the banality of existence and how your highs are much higher to you than what people expect.
Yeah.
And your lows don't actually show as much like the way you would expect it to be. So I think that moment when Trish kind of walks off, like we've mentioned this before with him showing Pedro like that picture of his girlfriend and it's just a model. His interest in Trish was more of a status thing. And so her kind of walking off, he's like, oh, well, you know, happened again, kind of a thing where he's trying to showcase how important he is, but nobody's really biting.
Yeah.
And the emotional part for me was actually when he did dance with Deb, though.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that moment where he kind of like touches her sleeves or something, because ultimately he was interested in her from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I liked that kind of understated, quiet moment they had together where it's, I understand what's happening,
Yeah.
but it's not really showcased in a grand way
Yeah.
people would expect
Because
from a
this movie
Hollywood
doesn't
film.
need it.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that kind of sold me, Irina. And I
But it doesn't have to. I'm just saying, like, that's
no, it
that's
did. You did it. You
how
did it.
I read the scene.
No, you did a good job. I think I could have just, and I don't want this movie to get anywhere close to drama territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. But I just could have used maybe like one minor character break. Like
Uh-huh.
just a slight, like, I don't know, looking slightly more dejected than he normally
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I
Like
think
just ever so slightly.
emotional trajectory being portrayed more plainly, I guess, would
Mhm.
help with the kind of seemingly lack of plot. If they kind of tightened up some of the edits, like the FFA stuff was just kind of lumped in there, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so they did that to try to get some social clout,
Right.
But if you don't kind of read back into that, you don't like, okay, what was the deal with that random
Yeah,
scene
that
that
was-
was in there?
That was
didn't-
more like
I
more
didn't know
like
until
a
I read the
skit.
plot.
It was
So-
more like a skit put in.
Yeah, the only
whole
clue
thing.
was
Yeah.
that they wore the medals and the jacket, the Letterman jacket,
Right,
to school
right.
the next day as they're campaigning. But otherwise, I think if he had a emotional journey too, along with the story, then that would have kind of lumped it in with what you're expecting with your 3 extras
Yeah.
or whatever. So
Yeah. I
I'm
just think
curious. Noah's been quiet. I want to hear some of his thoughts here.
Oh, on what?
The emotional
Per se.
resonance of Napoleon and
That's-
the type
you're
of
putting words
deeper
in my mouth.
narrative
putting
on
words in my
Napoleon
mouth.
Dynamite.
Yeah, I want this to be
um,
Requiem for a Dream, not.
Did he die in the end?
Well, no, I'm kind of a little in between. I think it's just right. I don't think they really needed a lot of drama in there, and there is a slight bit of it. I think if there were some drama or more emotion to it, I wouldn't have the same feeling for the movie as a whole as I do. I think that's really important. You could have this emotional trajectory, or you could showcase a little more of how he's feeling about things, but ultimately you wouldn't feel good at the end of the day watching the movie, and you want to feel good.
Yeah.
And there is some, though, like Irina said, in there. It's just not blatantly obvious. I mean, you look at his existence, and it's not exactly amazing, and he knows that.
Well, I
don't
was
know. I
thinking
would
the
love to
same.
be able to look at Tots the way he does.
Yeah.
But
No,
no,
no one
Actually,
does.
not saying emotionally, like they need to pour heaps of it in and
Yeah.
Right,
lay it
yeah.
on thick. I'm just saying, something that could have helped, round things out would be to sand down those blocked edges, and that could use to kind of fill and smooth the transition a little bit.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I agree. The transitions can be a little bit awkward because you go from, that scene where Trish leaves him and then he dances with Deb, and then suddenly you cut to the next scene and it's, like a month later or whatever.
Mhm.
It doesn't say a month later, but it seems like a considerable amount of time passed, and it's a completely new day. You forget about the things that happened
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
So I would like a little bit more of a through line, but at the same time, it kind of mirrors an anthology, sort of. But
through like little vignettes.
yeah,
of-
just little. It's like it's almost like those little like Garfield or like
yeah.
strips.
thing, you see a little comic strip and it's played
Mhm.
out, and then you go to the next one, and these
Oh,
are the
man.
characters
I could totally
Yeah,
see
yeah.
each
Yeah.
one of these in their own little comic strip.
Yep,
I could
yeah, I
totally
could
see
too.
that.
It almost makes you wonder if they were going for that kind of
Well,
formula.
there was an animated
I'm
series
sorry,
after
John.
this.
So you kind of brought this up, Noah, about how the way they thread the line is almost perfect for maximizing the
Thread
audience.
the needle, I think, is what you're going for.
Yeah, I kind of combined analogies and expressions.
He's
or
trying to
I
whatever.
say
get it.
through line.
The through line,
Yeah.
whatever it
Idioms.
is, thread the needle. But the point is, I think that they somehow, I don't know if they stumbled into it or if it was done intentionally, but because they didn't pick a side on that, I think they maximized the amount of people they could reach with it. Because if they went with a more, even if it was slightly more subtle on a dramatic side where they reach more emotionally, I think that would have turned off certain audiences more.
Well,
and then maybe I don't think this movie would have landed the same way.
Dude, here's where I'm gonna press up again.
You press up against me. I'll love it.
I'll press up against you, David.
Please.
No, I think, and I'm talking about very, very fine tuning, like very slight.
Yeah.
Like I'll turn the dial like one notch in one
There's
direction.
one eyebrow
Like,
raise in
think
one
it's,
scene.
and it happens at the end. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna turn the dial up on the sentimental, sad, dejected part in the dance scene. Just make it slightly more sad for him. Not to take away, not to change the tone of the movie, but more just to be like, okay, emphasize that, like punch that a little harder. Another dial I would turn ever so slightly is the final dance. I want him to have a success and not an awkward walk off the stage. I think it.
Hey,
yes,
it was. A
All right, I'm going to press back against that, but I'll save it for my review.
Here's the thing: it's in keeping with Napoleon as the character. That it always happens to him. But I wanted it was almost a disconnect with his awkward walk off the stage, and then everyone's applauding at that. I'm like, no. If I had seen it stop and him run off the stage, no matter how great it was I might have just kind of giggled.
So
no, there might have been people in there that were, but the thing is, I would have been the one clapping. I think, and I am the one clapping when I see it, and I have things to say about it, but I'm going to save it for my review at the end.
I will say, in balancing what we've all talked about, and I get where Reese is coming from too, because I'm in agreement. And this is a perfect world, fine tuning these little tweaks here and there. What prevents that, and in this case I'm pretty sure is why we got what we got, is budget. Those fine-tuning tweaks and stuff are in the logistics of filmmaking. Those are reshoots and multiple takes and things like that. They didn't have that luxury with this. I mean, it's very small budget, and such the fact that the final dance number, they literally had one reel of film left, which is like 10 minutes of footage.
I did read that.
They were like, okay, John, you got to nail this like that. We get one take. That's it.
I also heard about.
He freaking did.
I heard that with the tape too. That they couldn't do multiple takes. So I heard max they had 3 to 4 takes per scene max.
Yeah.
And most of which were done on the first take.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where you lose a little bit of the polish. That's just the logistics of not having that luxury of and also an experienced director. You come from a student, kind of a passion project, and embodying this certain, I guess I'll use the word vignette of, anecdotes from your own personal life and stuff like that, and having this quirky sheen on top of it. So it is a product of a certain type that's just wasn't mainstream, and it ended up in the mainstream.
Yeah. Irina, how successful, how do you feel by the end of this movie with all the events that have happened towards the end, and do you think it earns that final moment, like the tetherball scene? Are you feeling really good about this?
I am. Actually, last time I watched it, maybe not last time, but the time before that, when I watched it a month ago, it actually got me feeling a little emotional in a weird way, because I really don't like super sappy scripted lines, and they never get me really. But when there's something that feels kind of awkwardly authentic, and it's just simplified with a simple moment by we're just playing a game of tether and being ourselves, kind of a thing. I don't know, it hit me in the heart a little bit.
So I guess I want to get your impression of how would you fine tune anything about this, or are you like, this is ship it, it's perfect as is, this is great?
That sounds like we're saving that for the end.
I'm just talking about the actual end of this movie. I do
agree in some ways that a lot of moments feel like skits, and it doesn't all come together as an entire plot exactly, but I do see it as like a group of dreamers all approaching their dreams in very different ways, and in my mind is actually a great way to tell a story as well. So it's it's not so much that I'm really looking for a direct plot line or whether this scene really emphasizes the trajectory or not. You find you're kind of in a small way rooting for all the characters, and they go through their own highs and lows throughout the movie, and it all ends in a very kind of like happy neutral is what I would describe it. And it's not exuberant, but it's pleasant. So I wouldn't change too much about this movie.
Yeah, and I don't know, like I probably wouldn't either, if I'm being honest with myself.
Yeah.
There's just certain things that, like, I wouldn't be able to do this any better, but as I'm watching, I'm like, maybe I would say, I don't know. You know, it's like,
it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Like, if you could make something that was more impactful emotionally if you altered some things, but it would kind of change the mood of the movie entirely.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're trying to get out of it, really.
There are a bunch of plates spinning with this. And it does feel like if you tweaked one of those plates just slightly, the whole thing would crumble. That's how I feel about this movie. And they somehow did thread the needle and make it all kind kind of come together, which it doesn't feel like it should. But it does.
David
I did it. I found the expression.
We forgot to talk about LaFonda and Kip, by the way.
I don't know what it is about that, but I absolutely love it.
LaFonda is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
I'm pretty sure I mentioned. I'm pretty sure she's my soulmate. But I love how this movie. I remember the first time watching it and expecting things to go a certain way.
Yeah.
And it didn't. You know, and that was one of them. Like,
I love that LaFonda's real.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought legitimately it was going to be a catfish.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't even show up. Or if she did, it was not what he expected.
I thought it was either going to be a guy or nobody at all.
And same thing goes with Napoleon's Dance. I remember sitting in the seat going, oh no, you know, like this is going to be bad. But
and then he
pleasantly
nails it.
surprised.
And
yeah, man, you got some good like thrust action in there too.
Hey, he busts some moves.
So apparently, by the way, John Heater is an actual dancer. Like he dances, and he and his brother would go out and just do dance numbers together. And so the director knew this and was like, "We got to do this in this."
Yeah.
And they made it happen. Like, and
he improv'd it.
The Jamiroquai stuff. That the song that you hear was it Can't Heat? Yeah. So they were on like a road somewhere in Preston, Idaho, and they were just out there, and they're like, he turned on the radio and was like, John, just dance to whatever song comes on, and it was Canned Heat by Jamiroquai.
It's a good song.
And he saw him dance to it, and he was like, we're using that song.
That's funny.
And that's how that happened.
It's
which is,
good.
he's like, you can't script this. It just happened.
Yeah, and this was before they even knew they could get the license for it.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
fun
just had
fact
to do
before we leave, some of y'all probably know this already because you read IMDb facts, but how much do you think John Heater got paid to play this role?
I'll opt out of this
I
one.
know this one.
Okay.
Noah, do you know?
I don't know.
I think we all know
Yes.
numbers,
I think
but
we
I
all
know that it's very, very low.
Take a guess.
Like $1,000.
Yeah,
It's exactly
$1,000.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it right.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know how much he probably made a good amount on like back end for this movie.
I
I
feel
don't know
like
if
this
there's
is
a
one
deal
of the
for that.
cases where they renegotiated after the fact. I know there was some court action going on with Searchlight, Fox Searchlight Pictures, Spotlight, Searchlight.
Searchlight, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of royalties and
Right.
mumbo jumbo stuff. But yeah. And, this is a case where like Hess's little brother was in, as an extra in some of the scenes. His brother's friend was the bully. They gave him the headlock, and a lot of it, like craft services, were just like, kind of simple stuff, tater tots that were like cold and stuff. And the Uncle Rico's van was they were originally planning on getting in like an Airstream trailer, but they saw this Ram van driving around, like, we got to get that. So they stopped the guy and asked if they could use it for the movie, and he said yes. And a lot of the houses were basically the residents just kind of saying, okay, use our house pro bono.
It's so good.
So a lot of it is just being thrifty as well, which is kind of awesome.
It is
that
awesome.
success
It's
story.
really cool.
Well, it's almost sad because like people after the fact are trying to probably milk money out of it because they're like, I was a part of this and it's a cultural phenomenon now. And yes, it is. But also in the time, they didn't know it was going to be. This was a super low budget movie and we're barely scraping by as it was. So they needed to do all this. They needed the pro bono stuff.
Yeah.
And imagine if they didn't, it wouldn't be the same. But afterwards, now people are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I guess. And that's just kind of money everywhere. And I was going to kind of talk about this in my review a little bit, but part of the success story for this movie in general, on top of, the characters and the social phenomenon it was just seeing a success story as an underdog themselves. Like, say, all of us together, this group, went out and made a home movie and it, hit the mainstream, made it big. It's one of those kind of stories. It's like, yeah, these people had this ambition, this idea. I think Hess dropped out of school. I don't think he finished his degree to make this movie or something like that. I could be wrong. Fact check that, please. But I mean, it's like kind of a true follow your dream, do this because that's what you want to do, and you've got this talent. And all these people that knew each other, went to school together, and kind of had this rapport, made it work and made this, amazing phenomenon.
All right, any final words on the story to Napoleon Dynamite before we close out and then move on to, all that other stuff? I'll take that as a no. So we're going to take a quick break, and on the other end, we'll get into our brief reviews with numbered scores, get into what critics thought, then we'll do some box office, and close out with a little bit of franchise talk. Welcome back. Let's talk Napoleon Dynamite. David, you got our scores there in the bowl. You want to pull them at random?
Oh boy, do I. First up, Irina with a 10.
No way.
This movie in my mind is a perfect 10.
No way.
No way. No, I think it's really well done. Definitely in my top 10, maybe even 5 or 3, I don't know, comedies out there. This is sort of what I want from a comedy in general. I find a lot of other comedies to be a little tedious and sort of hitting all the same notes over and over and over again. So something that's a unique perspective and showcases a style of life that honestly isn't showcased enough in a very authentic way, where you see the lives of individual people that they're big dreamers, but living in surroundings that are kind of stifling those dreams, but they still sort of pursue it in their own way. And it's not unrealistic in its outcome, which is another trope, I think, in movies like this, is everyone has a very realistic outcome that for them is a triumph. So you have Napoleon, who he reconciles with Deb and he shows his talent to the entire school. Although it was awkward, it was something that he managed to do that was a skill he had and not some unrealistic skill that he couldn't achieve. Then you have Kip, who actually does find love and moves on, gets married after credits. And Uncle Rico, who, is detestable. He's the antagonist pretty much in this, that sort of inspires Napoleon to kind of just push away from being that kind of person. Yeah. And is really the reason he sort of hits all the high moments he does in his trajectory here in this movie. But even Uncle Rico, it's kind of alluded to that there's some kind of reconciling with his ex. And maybe he just needed to be knocked down at some point to realize that. So I think this is an incredibly wholesome movie, and it's hilarious, and it's quotable. It succeeds in everything that I would hope it succeeded in, and I can't really emphasize that enough. So I'm giving it a 10, full 10.
Cool. Love it.
Next up, AJ with an 8.5.
Nice.
All right, so a lot to pick apart here. I mean, this movie is unique, and so it stands apart. So it's kind of hard to compare to other things, but kind of drafting off of what Irina was talking about in terms of comedy, and not to sound like a prude or anything, but it's a challenge in the last few decades, I would say, to make a comedy that has like so much of an impact without really having any like toilet humor or lewdness or anything like that, overly raunchy. It's I think quotability is the key here for the market penetration and the market longevity. Like it's an institution almost. I mean, people know what this movie is. I think even young kids now who don't know how to type without a touchscreen will probably know what Napoleon Dynamite is and hear quotes for it. And kind of was said at the top, it's multi-generational. Now, I think that some of that is probably limited to having, a secondary degree of separation. I think if you're coming at this cold, then you may have to warm up to a little bit. But then again, that universal aspect of it is in portraying this kind of melting pot of Americana, like Irina said, is it's kind of a universal language for people here in the U.S. at least, and growing up in whatever decade you grew up in. So that itself is kind of awesome that it was able to accomplish that at such a low budget. I mentioned the underdog story of the production, kind of, and this kind of group of friends from BYU and kind of knowing each other and starting from this kind of small student indie film, growing to something bigger. And now like everyone knows quotes from this movie. I do think it had opportunity to polish off some editing, like the FFA scene. It's funny, but it's out of place. I think some of those could be better planned and, afford more opportunity for some emotional depth and a little bit of character dynamic instead of constantly being ironically banal for the sake of humor, if that makes sense. It's a little one-noted in its approach and delivery, and it's awesome it's easily digestible and stuff like that. But I think they could have had their cake and eaten it too. They could have built their cake and eaten it too, I should have say. That you could have some real character depth in there, and me putting myself in Napoleon's shoes is really easy for me. And just like the lines, like, when he's sitting on the bleachers with Pedro and saying, "So we're pretty much friends now, right?" Like just kind of navigating those social situations, and it's like you're kind of this social outcast and you don't know how to deal with things, but just this camaraderie by similar situations and stuff like resonates with me. And at the same time, like, he could have really pushed a little bit deeper in some of the not so happy things and stuff. But then that would have really made the triumph at the end and the dance scene and everything more even sweeter. So that was the opportunity there. I know they did a lot with the limited budget, and that hinders logistics and multiple takes and stuff to really iron things out. But again, it's room for growth. Overall, great movie, one of a kind, and definitely has inspired quite a bit of other comedies. So it's kind of a touchstone almost, where it's something that everyone knows about, and yet it's this one of a kind thing that people try to emulate. So some opportunity for fixes there, where it's not so much multiple skits stitched together. But yeah, 8.5 I think is pretty fair.
Yeah.
All right. Next up,
Well said, by the way.
David with a 10.
Oh, really?
Whoa.
Wow.
I think this is a perfect movie. I think that this movie is 100% real. I think
It is a real movie. It is true.
Look, if they try to play any more than this, no matter how subtle they try to be, it would create a kind of movie. This may be a film, but it doesn't really feel like a blockbuster movie. It feels like somebody took a camera, they went into the real world and found this awkward scenario.
It feels tactile. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, a lot of this for me is nostalgic. A lot of this is built on, seeing this as a child and having really good memories with it. But it just feels like I don't want any emotional narrative in this movie at all.
Mhm.
I want this to be bland. I want this to be like just randomness, which is kind of what it is. It creates that sense of realness. In real life, you're not going to have somebody, showcasing a little bit of subtleness in their emotion. It's because, oh man, they're slightly hurt. No, I think that this is just Napoleon's life. And that's kind of how I like it. The music is great. The connections between characters, the slight, issues with Rico. It's just real to me. And I think there could be a way to make this better movie. It could be. But because of how perfect it is already to me, that there would never be a thought in my mind to risk trying to even change it.
Yeah, and I think this falls under just because you give a movie a 10, that doesn't make you're not saying like, oh, there's nothing to fault this with.
Yeah,
It's just
agree.
It's go with the heart. This is how I feel about this movie.
It's just like there's nothing about this that doesn't make me think this is a movie that I would want unchanged forever. And I love it, so I'm gonna keep it a 10.
What about the skills? Did his skills translate to you? Like,
honestly, that was the biggest development in this movie. He went from complaining about not having skills that girls would like to being a dance master. So,
what about like football playing skills? He never really got that.
No, but he is pretty good with the nunchucks. They don't show it, but he is. And
could he fight off a Yeti?
I believe you. I believe he could.
Or 100 badgers or whatever it was, or Wolverines.
I think he's getting at something else here, guys.
No, he's got a 12 gauge.
Yeah, I think maybe a 7 gauge would have been better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And
not a thing, but okay.
You know what I'm saying here.
I know we're trying to,
but his uncle's pretty good at football, though.
Yeah, yep. He would have thrown a football right.
He did
over
act
them.
like a Yeti.
So yeah, this
He
is
ran
all
like
reference to David, who did in fact give Mummy 2 and the Dragon Emperor a 7 out of 10 way back in the day, and he stands by it.
I stand by it. Next up, Reese with an 8.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I got talked into liking this more throughout the review, so this will be a rare of me maybe upping it a 0.5. That said, my thing with this movie, I did have some contention. It was similar to AJ, where it was just like, what is this product? It is that's not a fair word, but what is this piece of art? Was the writing someone coming up with a whole bunch of different scenarios that were funny and then saying like, oh, how can we connect all these scenarios with a threadbare plot? Which is kind of what this movie feels like at times. Or is it just like, and sorry people hate this, but is it just a vibe? Like, is it just...
Well, it's a vibe. It's 100% a vibe.
Yeah, is it just like, this is a sequence of events and the plot, it doesn't matter. Like, and it all boils down to like, okay, Reese, stop trying to analyze this from that perspective. Do you enjoy what was put in front of you? And my answer to that would be yes, I enjoyed what was put in front of me in this movie.
You have to treat this movie like that.
Yeah, and it's similar to, and I'm going to make another wild comparison, to the later Mission Impossible movies, where the way those movies are written, they come up with the action scenes first. They're like, what is the craziest thing we can put Tom Cruise through? And then they're like, okay, now let's finagle the plot around these insane sequences.
We want him hanging off of a plane while it's flying.
Yeah, how do we get that to happen? Exactly. So it's like reverse engineering into a movie. And it's kind of what Napoleon Dynamite is for comedy in a weird way, where it's just all these like weird scenarios that they do naturally blend together, but it's connected by the most tenuous of threads. But it's all to give you this, I don't know, this entree of really eccentric but endearing sequences that fit together like a nice puzzle. Like it just all kind of works. And my other issue that I was kind of dealing with is Napoleon Dynamite himself, while he is like just hilarious to watch and a perfect, like and Johnny Heater perfectly embodies this just weird character to watch. I was like, but is this enough to hold a movie up? And I was kind of looking for that extra little, like, just give me a little more something here. And I think that's where I do stand by that the movie falls just a smidge short, because I think we could have used maybe a little more. I'm not saying the character doesn't have depth, but maybe a little more, I don't know, a scene, and we talked about it already, but just a scene where like he breaks from that what we've expected the whole time. I never see him remove the facade of this
because he's strong. Napoleon is strong.
No, he's always behind this thing. Like he's always kind of shielded in that way, and that is never kind of torn down.
Yeah, you
like
want to see that. Okay, some of this is him being, as a guard that protects himself instead of 100%. That's who he is.
Yeah. But ultimately, like I would change very little about this movie, and as I said earlier, it's just very fine tunings that I would make that I think would really propel this for me up into the upper echelon. But I've been convinced I'm gonna up my 8.0 to an 8.5. I think this movie's great, and I couldn't have done a better job. But I wouldn't quite go as far as 10 out of 10. So that's where I'm at, 8.5.
I just thought of an astute analogy for this movie, but I'll let another go.
No, you already said
you have the floor, man.
Just do it.
Well, it's just like this movie is like a liger. Like you've got elements of a tiger and a lion. You don't normally see a blend of them together in the real world. It's a thing, but it's kind of missing that actual magic element there that kind of pushed it to the edge. I don't know.
Yeah.
The liger analogy. Love it.
All right.
I liger it. All right. Last but not least, we have Noah with an 8.
Yeah, so I'm also in the 8 area, and I think this movie just it has a way of getting everyone to just kind of be entranced by it, enjoy it, watch it, and even on some level, everyone identifies with Napoleon or at least a character in this in some way. And, you kind of get attached to him and you want him to succeed. And then at the end, when he does, it's just a great moment. And I love that they did that. They went the trajectory of, painting that picture of his life. And, he doesn't really do any cool things. He's not very well liked. He gets bullied, all of that. Then at the end, he decides, I'm going to do something cool. Or do something with, learn a skill, I guess. And then he dances and everyone claps and cheers and, you're excited with him. And it's a good dance.
Yeah.
Also, when you think about how the dance, finally, it was something that wasn't for his own status. It was, I need to do this for Pedro kind of thing.
Yeah. He was doing it for someone else.
And not to interject, but Irina, I think that is one moment. You're right, and I didn't, for whatever reason, didn't think of it, where he does kind of develop in a way, and I saw a slight change.
Yeah.
But continue now.
Yeah, usually he's kind of just protecting himself or trying to. And he doesn't often have good things to say, I guess.
Yeah.
But then in that moment, he's like, well, I'm going to defend my friend. Just because of that dance scene, I'll bump it up a 0.5.
The dance scene got it.
I love it.
I love that dance scene, man.
Honestly, you're right. That dance scene could sell the movie.
Yeah, all the rest of the movie is enjoyable and funny, but then I think that dance scene is the heart of the movie. It showcases all the different elements in one of just everything that it's about, and I love it. So yeah,
all right.
8.5.
Looks like we're gonna have a pretty good average for this one. AJ, you want to crunch those numbers?
All right, our group average for Napoleon Dynamite is a 9.0. That ties it with It 2017 and Leon the Professional.
Interesting.
So just above that, we have 9.1s for The Prince of Egypt, Django Unchained, 2001 A Space Odyssey, and Enter the Dragon. And trailing behind that, we have A Fistful of Dollars, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and Moon at 8.9.
How does that make y'all feel?
I love that this movie is
No comment.
like right next to 2001 A Space Odyssey.
I would personally put it a little lower.
Look, it's always hard to compare movies of different genres.
No, it is, but it is, but there are some that like Hotel Budapest, Grand Budapest Hotel. I would put in this range, and I would see it side by side and be content.
I justify it because I feel good about this because it feels so unique and
it is
of itself. It's like it's an uncompromised vision in a way.
Yeah. and
Whereas I would go ahead.
the best comparison of those lists are, not necessarily thematically, but Moon also being low budget and kind of like a visionary kind of film.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so funny though. Yeah, both like shoestring budgets, relatively speaking. I know Moon cost more, but still, like for what that movie accomplished, wow. Yeah,
I love Moon.
Oh, I remember you love Moon.
I love Moon.
Are you sure you love Moon, or are you just looking at things around the room and saying you love them?
I
love Lamp.
I love Moon.
All right. Well, man, I never would have anticipated this, but Napoleon Dynamite 9.0 out of.
I'm not surprised.
I was more thinking that this was going to average around the 8.4 area.
I thought
Like,
it would be around 8.5 to 9.
Well, you can
Yeah,
thank
but-
Irene and I later.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the 10s, but I applaud y'all for that.
Yeah.
I don't give out 10s willy-nilly, by the way. I think in the totality of the years we've done this, I've given out like 3.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Let's get on to what critics thought. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 72%, and with audiences, it has a 74%. So positive, but not like
not surprising.
super glowing reviews. And obviously, we kind of know that because this movie has broad, but also kind of specific humor.
Polarizing would be a good word.
Yeah. On Metacritic, it's got a 64 with an audience score of 7.4. So just so you know, Metacritic 61 and up is considered generally favorable reviews. So it's in the green, even though 64 sounds like a failing grade. That's good for Metacritic. So I just have the urge to say that anytime a movie is kind of close to that line there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still well regarded on Metacritic as well, and audiences like it, 7.4. IMDb is where it gets a little more interesting. We have a 6.9, and you were alluding to that earlier, David. Yeah, a little more polarizing on IMDb. Usually for a healthy IMDb score, you want like that 7.5 or up. Pretty good. Like that's a good metric for if it's a good movie. This one falls under that in the 6s. I mean, barely in the 6s. It's almost into that 7 area. I would say like a 7 is passing on IMDb. The window for IMDb is so weird, by the way. It's like 7.
It's audience, right? It's not critics.
That's audience. Yeah, it's audience based. So it's 7 to like, and it's so hard to get into 9 on IMDb. It's like the window for success there is like 7 to 8.8 or
Yeah, there's
something.
definitely a bell curve on.
Yeah. It makes no sense to me the way that
Well, if it's
plays
like
out.
if it's like Netflix, which is also an audience-based score, it would make sense because they also had issues with high 10 scores and low 1 scores. So I can imagine that would
Isn't
affect
Netflix
IMDb.
just thumbs up or thumbs down?
yeah, or it
I'm
was
sure they
at
have.
least.
They probably have their own critics for certain things.
I haven't rated a single thing on Netflix, so I wouldn't know.
I don't know.
I just like watch whatever. I
Though,
don't
isn't
care.
that technically the same as Rotten Tomatoes? It's kind of
Netflix?
just a thumbs up,
Similar,
thumbs down.
but no.
Because it's recommend or don't recommend.
The
Yeah, but
result is, but the method is not.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, but good news. Net positive on this one. I wouldn't say great reviews, but good reviews. Like I think this one goes in the books as decently regarded by critics and audiences, and it does have that. Now I don't even want to say cult following. It's more than a cult following. It did break into the mainstream. I feel like once like sales of DVD Blu-rays were factored in, like it did pretty well. But you know, big success for this one, and yeah, good reviews.
Box office.
Thank you, David.
I know. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun.
Moving on to box office. So yeah, the movie opened on June 11th in 2004, and as AJ said, also playing at the time was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, The Chronicles of Riddick, Shrek 2, Garfield, The Stepford Wives, and The Day After Tomorrow. What do y'all think this movie did at the worldwide box office? Let's start this time with AJ.
All right, you said 400,000 budget, 2004, 35
million.
Yeah, you gotta clarify
Gotta
on this
specify,
one.
yeah.
Sure you don't want to up that to billion?
35 billion, the most
billion.
profitable
1 trillion,
movie of
Bob.
all time.
20 million.
20 millions! Arena, what do you think?
Oof.
$400,000 budget.
This comes across to me as something that had sort of a limited release, though. But I don't know. I never really look up that part about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will just say 20 millions. Let's
Good
just do
guess.
that.
Can you say it like that character in
20
Jurassic World?
millions.
20 millions.
All right, David.
Is this before or after DVD sales?
DVD does not factor into box office.
Well, I don't know.
'Cause,
1
yeah.
million.
You're
1
wrong.
million.
1 million.
All right, Noah.
I'm gonna guess 10 million.
Okay. AJ, you were easily the closest on
Dang.
this one.
So it got high then.
the-
50?
Yeah, the movie made 46 million at
You
the
just
box
ran
office.
a number. You could have been there.
Mostly in North
Yeah, I
America.
know.
North America, it made 44.5 million, and in other territories, it made 1.5 million. Yeah, the movie was a success in North America, not other territories. It had an extreme multiplier, and y'all were right. It did start as an indie release. It was an independent release, released in 6 theaters.
Wow.
Its opening weekend was only $116,000, and it just blew up from there. There was actually a pretty, I think it was a pretty big bidding war for this movie when it first hit the festival circuit, where it was like, no, I want it, with between the studios, and finally like Fox snapped it up. Because I think they saw something, and it was having a pretty good reactions, and they were just like, okay, this is something kind of special.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it hung around for a really long time, made a great amount of money, and this is a trend with your miniseries. I mean, it's a word of mouther.
Yeah.
Whereas and that might be a better name for your miniseries, just word of mouth, just because
that works.
all 3 of
Well,
them.
Don't speak too soon.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But yeah, all 3 so far have been like word of mouth hits after the fact. This one, I would say, out of all of yours in the miniseries so far, was the only box office quote unquote hit.
Yeah.
In the sense that it barely cost anything, and it had a massive multiplier over its starting. But here's the thing: if you had a traditional comedy come out that would cost the standard 15, 20 to 30 million. This would have been a bomb with that $44 million take. That's not even close to like 3 times the budget. This is just a case of like, did not cost anything, probably pretty low marketing, definitely benefited from word of mouth, people saying like, this is hilarious, you got to see it, it's so weird, different. So yeah, good box office story for this one, but I still think this falls within the category of cult classic, just because it still didn't have those numbers that would be like, oh, huge,
Right.
you know? And it did really rely on the further DVD sales, Blu-ray sales, and has lived on. I will say I think its star has slightly faded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it's held on quite as well as some other comedies. I mean, a few of us talked about how we haven't seen it since, 2010?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I
We make contact.
yeah, exactly. I think and this is not a judge of quality, but I think the legacy of something like Anchorman, that also came out in 2004, has lived on a little more than Napoleon Dynamite in a way.
I will counter that sentiment. And, well, not counter it, but maybe a factor of that is, I guess, the visibility, public image of those stars. So
Yeah.
John Heder has not been as prolific as
That's true.
Steve.
Will Ferrell.
Will
Will
Ferrell.
Ferrell.
Thank you.
I mean, he's an indie actor. You're not really expecting
Yeah.
to know his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Will Ferrell's
never
very
heard of him.
indie.
Anyway, he keeps putting out stuff, and he's still in the public eye, so people are always kind of going through his filmography backlog. But, fair enough.
And there was a sequel to Anchorman, so
On the bigger budget, you have multiple stars. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors. So
yeah. I just think here's how I'll frame it. I think there hasn't been as much effort to uphold Napoleon Dynamite in pop
The
culture.
zeitgeist.
Yeah, exactly. It's more just carried on by word of mouth versus these other things, which money
And
has been
attempted
pumped.
TV show.
I will
Yeah.
say, though, Napoleon Dynamite might have some good staying power in family situations because it lends itself to that more than Anchorman.
Look, I think
Agree.
if people even talk about this movie at all today, when it costs $400,000 to make, and none of these people are major blowout actors. This is punching above its weight class. Like,
oh yeah, no, it definitely is, and I'm not trying to take away from it. I just think I don't hear as much about Napoleon Dynamite these days.
If it had if the cast of this went on to be professional actors, like that, okay, that's rude. But like, imagine if it was the star power that, like AJ said, with Anchorman. If all these people had the same weight that everyone in Anchorman had, I think this would have the same cultural impact.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to franchise talk. So this movie did receive, as AJ stated earlier, a animated series. It only had 6 episodes, came out in 2010, wasn't super successful. I don't even know if it was well regarded, but there was an animated series based off this. I think it's 2 seasons, 6 episodes, which I've
Original
never heard
voice
of.
cast.
I didn't even know it existed.
Which that is so few episodes to be doled out among 2 seasons. I'll have to further make sure that it was actually 2, but I think it ran for like 2 years or something.
I mean, take Sherlock as an example, though. Though those are like an hour and a half per episode.
It says 1 season, 6 episodes.
Oh, okay. Well, how many years was it between though? It's like 2010 to something.
Yeah, I cannot confirm the years.
That's fine. But yeah, I got an animated series. It was pretty much canceled. Wasn't super successful. But recently, and I'm taking this from Wikipedia, but it is verified on other sources, but Wikipedia did a good job of kind of consolidating the information. So it was reported in September 2020 that a sequel to Napoleon Dynamite was in discussion. Heater stated that he is interested in a darker take on the film's characters instead of rehashing the original film's plot. I would say you don't have to go darker, and you also don't have to rehash the original film's plot. There's another route you can take and just be different. But
answering your question, January through March of 2012.
Okay, so I was completely wrong there. Just 1 year, 6 episodes, and done. First off, what do you think of this idea from Heater? A darker Napoleon Dynamite.
I want to know what he's imagining.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. I don't
Just
know
watch
if I
it
would
be
want
Donnie
to...
Darko, and he's like
Oh,
gets
gosh.
smashed by a plane.
I don't know
engine
if
or
I
something.
would want to see it, but I'm curious, like, what you would do.
Well, I'm
with that.
afraid. I'm afraid what it would be is they got all washed up after that, and nothing went well, and they're just now it can be a redemption story.
They're all sharing
yeah.
needles.
Man, we're on the Jake Gyllenhaal train here. Just trade him out with Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
Put Napoleon Dynamite in the Nightcrawler position.
Oh my gosh.
No,
I do not want to see that. But
I don't either.
I think
fighting people with nunchucks.
I think Napoleon Dynamite would try to go the Batman route, where he's like, "Yeah, I'm a watcher in the night, and I'll
Surrounded
free
by
this town of
idiots.
crime. I'm surrounded by idiots."
I'm gonna free this town of idiots.
Gosh.
Anyway, so that was in 2020, so actually very recently, which surprised me when I was researching this. I'm like, whoa, I thought there would be sequel talk, kind of like, in 2005, 2006.
Right, or something where there's an interview where they're like, "Do you think you would play this role again?" It's like, "Yeah, I'd be interested in a
Yeah,
sequel." Where it's
exactly.
like, it's not really, but
It would have to be, I would say Kip and Lafonda's kid, and then you have Uncle Napoleon coming around.
oh my gosh, that would be great.
I would watch it. Like, out of sheer morbid curiosity, I would
Yeah, I
watch
would
a sequel
watch
to
it
this
too.
movie. Anyway, Efren Ramirez improvised a script for a sequel in which Pedro is married to Summer Wheatley, has 5 kids,
Oh
and
my
owns a bakery.
gosh. What?
Yeah, in the same hypothetical script,
Where they
Kip
build cakes.
Kip has fulfilled his dream to become a cage fighter,
Oh
while
my
Rico has
gosh.
ventured into a new business that he believes will make him rich.
I want to see this movie
What
so
did-
bad.
I like
Did it say
Efren
anything
Ramirez's idea a little
I
more.
love.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. I want to see it.
It didn't touch on what Napoleon's doing at the time.
No, not in that. What I
So-
read for that.
No, he died in a drug overdose. That's the dark aspect there.
No,
That'd be so messed up.
He said he wanted it darker.
awful.
Yeah, so dark that he's not in the movie.
Everything
Yeah,
was just a acid trip.
He overdid it on the donuts.
Well, I killed
Yeah.
the mood.
No, I'm
You're cackling while you did it too.
I was trying to picture it like, Requiem for Dynamite. There you go.
Oh yeah, and the whole
Awful.
movie is they're coming back to their hometown
Pay
for his
their
funeral.
respects.
This should just be a new game. Is transplant Napoleon Dynamite character into like big TV shows. So
Oh my
instead of
god.
Breaking
Heisenberg,
Bad.
yeah, you literally read my mind. Breaking Bad.
What?
Napoleon
Whoa.
Dynamite, Heisenberg.
So
I love how both y'all
Breaking
went there
Dynamite.
first.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is terrible. All right, so there you have it. Sequel still in limbo. I think that's a pipe dream. I don't think it's happening. But the fact that they talked about it means that it's eligible for the show, and that's really all we need. We need that little bitty
Sliver of
bit
hope.
of evidence, and that invalidates it for conversation.
Here's a nice. I wish it. I hope it does happen because it's at that point way after the fact that if it's good, I can count it as it's connected. But if it's bad, I can say
The
that's
Lord
just,
of the Rings method.
that's just not. We just ignore that.
Like Lord of the Rings with the
I-
TV show.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I can say anything that comes out now. Like, that's not connected.
I'll be the only person who ever thinks this, but I would love to come back to it again. I would love to see a smash together of this universe and Step Brothers.
That would be great.
Because John Heder and Will Ferrell have worked together in Blades of Glory, and they actually had a pretty good, I don't know, they played off of
movie's
each other well.
ridiculous, but
And
it's pretty
Step
good.
Brothers has a
Or it's
weird,
funny.
similar feel to this movie in terms of just awkward, off-kilter moments that are outrageous.
John Heder was like a little star in our life for like
Or-
5 years and gone.
Yeah.
So go with that whole Kip's kid, Uncle Napoleon, and Hedro, and then you have the role models aspect.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah, role models.
Paul Rudd.
Get Paul Rudd in there.
I would love to see Paul Rudd in this.
Sean William Scott. That's another guy that kind of fell off the
He
face of the
did
earth.
fall off. Yeah.
All right, well, that's the end of our discussions on Napoleon Dynamite. Irina, what is next on the docket here?
Next, we have Sucker Punch.
And you obviously picked this because Napoleon Dynamite, the ending of this movie, dovetails right into lobotomies and fantasy.
It's all just
and,
a trip. In the end.
just trippy fights with dragons and
Yeah.
samurais.
I
and-
think my placement of Napoleon Dynamite was to have like a little bright moment in the midst of our movies because most of them have been kind of like, well, most of them are a little on the dark side, but this one will be fun. And then Sucker Punch is fun in its own way.
And not to tease the episode, but this movie might be one that you feel that gets kind of an unfair bad rap, correct?
I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Well, I just wanted to leave that little bit of
And
know,
then Easter egg.
Kernel.
Little-
a kernel of something that could be true.
in
We'll
every
see.
lie, there's a kernel of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying I'm lying and there was a kernel of truth in there? I don't know if that fits.
It doesn't.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Next week, we're getting Zack Snyder on the board finally with Sucker Punch. Probably not the movie he would have wanted us to cover first, but we're doing it. Here we come. Sucker Punch next week. Goodbye.
The worst day of my life. What do you think?